A deafening emergency siren pierces the air as a mother frantically covers her child's face with a wet cloth. Through their living room window, an ominous yellow-green cloud creeps between houses. She clutches a framed wedding photo showing a younger, happier version of herself with a man whose face is immediately recognizable as Richard Blake. The same face now appearing on the television emergency broadcast, promising citizens, "There's nothing to fear." The mother's expression hardens as she whispers, "You promised that once before." Helicopter shots reveal a sprawling chemical plant belching toxic fumes, while emergency vehicles' flashing lights create a chaotic mosaic below. In the quiet town of Silver Creek, where maple trees line the streets and neighbors still greet each other by name, an invisible threat now hangs in the air. Literally. A yellowish haze drifts from the massive chemical plant that has been both the town's blessing and its curse for over 2 decades. Silver Creek Chemical Industries, the empire built by Richard Blake, the town's most prominent resident and self-made millionaire. For years, the plant provided jobs, prosperity, and a reason for the young people of Silver Creek to stay rather than seek their fortunes elsewhere. But now, as emergency vehicles race toward the facility and worried residents peer through their windows, the plant represents something else entirely: danger. Reports of a potential chemical leak have sent waves of panic rippling through the community. Elderly residents recall the horror stories of industrial disasters from decades past: Union Carbide in Bhopal, the Tennessee coal ash spill. Could Silver Creek be the next name on that terrible list? Inside his luxurious office atop the Blake Industries Tower downtown, Richard Blake's voice booms through the speakerphone, "I don't care what it costs. Fix it, now." At 45, Richard carries himself with the confidence of a man who has never truly failed at anything. His salt and pepper hair, perfectly tailored suit, and the commanding presence that fills any room have earned him both admiration and resentment in equal measure. What most of Silver Creek doesn't know is that Richard Blake's perfect facade hides a man who has perfected the art of leaving problems behind, especially the personal ones. As the town holds its collective breath, waiting to see if their air will remain breathable, a black government SUV crosses the county line, heading straight for Silver Creek. Behind the wheel sits a woman whose connection to this town runs deeper than anyone could imagine, especially Richard Blake. The SUV continues down the highway, passing a weathered sign that reads, "Welcome to Silver Creek, home of Blake Industries." The camera focuses on the driver's hands gripping the steering wheel tightly, a simple silver bracelet with a teardrop charm dangling from her wrist. A woman stands at a roadside overlook, gazing at the town below, her expression unreadable as she removes dark sunglasses. 10 years. 10 long years since Amara Johnson had seen Silver Creek. The town looked smaller somehow from this vantage point, more vulnerable. Or perhaps it was just that she had grown stronger. At 36, Amara carried herself with the quiet dignity of someone who had rebuilt her life from ashes, literally and figuratively. As one of the government's top environmental crisis specialists, Dr. Amara Johnson had traveled to disaster zones around the world. Oil spills in the Gulf, factory collapses in Bangladesh, uranium leaks in forgotten Soviet-era facilities. Each crisis had hardened her resolve and sharpened her skills. Each victim she helped had, in some small way, helped heal the wounds that Silver Creek had left on her soul. But this assignment was different. When the call came through about a potential catastrophic chemical leak at Blake Industries, Amara's first instinct had been to refuse. Her supervisor had been surprised. She never turned down assignments, especially not high-priority ones. How could she explain that returning to Silver Creek meant confronting ghosts she'd spent a decade outrunning? "You're the best we've got, Johnson," her supervisor had said. "Those people need you. Those people." The same ones who had watched in silence as a young, pregnant Amara had been discarded by Richard Blake, the town's golden boy. The same ones who had chosen sides and left her alone when she needed support most desperately. As she drives into town, memories flood back like a toxic spill. The small apartment they'd shared before his family's money came through. The way his eyes had lit up when she told him about the baby, And then the cold emptiness that had replaced that light when his business began to take off, and she became an inconvenience. "Priorities change," he had said, not even looking her in the eye as he packed his things. "I can't be tied down with a family right now. I'll send support." That support had never arrived. Neither had responses to her increasingly desperate calls when complications with her pregnancy arose. Alone, broke, and broken-hearted, she had left Silver Creek, vowing never to return. But fate, it seemed, had other plans. As Amara pulls into the parking lot of the Silver Creek Emergency Management Office, she touches the small teardrop pendant at her throat, a wedding gift from Richard that she keeps not as a memento of love but as a reminder of survival. Today, she is not the desperate young woman who fled this town in tears. Today, she is Dr. Amara Johnson, and she has come to save the very people who failed to save her. Inside the Emergency Management Office, a wall of monitors shows different angles of the chemical plant, where workers in hazmat suits scurry around a section of damaged containment wall, and in the corner of one screen, a black town car with tinted windows arrives at the main gate. In the central control room of Silver Creek Chemical Industries, chaos reigns. Red warning lights flash across banks of monitors as technicians scramble to make sense of the conflicting data. The atmosphere is thick with tension and the acrid smell of fear. "Containment levels in Sector 7 dropping again," shouts a technician, his voice cracking with stress. "We're looking at a potential breach in under 48 hours if we can't stabilize the system." The plant manager, Howard Westfield, a company man for 20 years who owes his career to Richard Blake, wipes sweat from his brow. He knows what's at stake, not just the lives of Silver Creek's 12,000 residents, but his own future, his pension, his reputation. The corners had been cut on his watch, after all. The maintenance delays, the ignored safety protocols, the falsified inspection reports, all with Richard's implicit blessing, of course. Efficiency measures, Richard had called them during quarterly reviews, his smile cold as he referenced profit margins and shareholder expectations. Now those efficiency measures threaten to poison an entire community. Outside the plant, the first signs of public panic have begun to emerge. The local supermarket shelves are emptying of bottled water and canned goods. The highway leading out of town is congested with cars packed full of belongings. Silver Creek Elementary School has announced an emergency closure. At the Silver Creek Emergency Management Office, the scene is one of grim determination. Maps of the town and surrounding areas cover every available surface. Officials from state and federal agencies huddle in corners, speaking in urgent whispers. And in the center of it all stands Amara Johnson, already taking command despite having arrived just hours ago. "I need evacuation routes established for these neighborhoods first," she says, circling areas on a map with a red marker. "They're downwind of the plant and will be hit hardest if there's a significant release." The local officials exchange glances. This woman they don't know, this outsider, has walked in and taken control with an authority they can't help but respect. "With all due respect, Dr. Johnson," begins the town's aging mayor, "shouldn't we wait for Mr. Blake to weigh in? It's his plant, after all, and he's been a pillar of this community for—" "People could die, Mayor Reynolds." Amara cuts him off, her voice level but intense. "Every hour we delay puts more lives at risk. Blake Industries created this crisis. They don't get to dictate the response." The mayor falls silent, chastened by the steel in her voice. What no one in the room realizes is that for Amara, this is personal in ways they cannot fathom. As she marks evacuation zones on the map, she can't help but note that the modest apartment building where she once lived with Richard is in the highest risk area. The park where he proposed to her would be blanketed with toxic fumes within hours of a breach. The past she has tried so hard to escape is literally mapped out before her, and now threatened with destruction. The irony isn't lost on her. 10 years ago, Richard Blake destroyed her world. Now she has returned to prevent him from destroying everyone else's. A black town car pulls up to the emergency management office, and Richard Blake steps out, straightening his tie, unaware that his past is waiting inside. Richard Blake is accustomed to making entrances. Whether in boardrooms or ballrooms, his arrival changes the energy of a room. People straighten their posture, check their appearance, and prepare their most ingratiating smiles. Power has that effect. This evening is no different as he strides into the Silver Creek Emergency Management Office, flanked by his personal assistant and legal counsel. The room falls quiet as heads turn toward him. All except for one. At the far end of the conference table, Amara keeps her back to the door, deliberately focusing on the environmental impact reports in front of her. She has prepared for this moment, rehearsed it in her mind countless times during the drive to Silver Creek. Still, her heart pounds against her ribcage with such force she fears others might hear it. "I understand the federal government has sent a specialist." Richard's voice fills the room, smooth and authoritative. "I'd like to speak with them immediately." Amara takes a deep breath and turns slowly. 10 years have been kind to Richard Blake. Success has added a distinguished touch of silver to his temples, and confidence has deepened the assurance in his stance. He looks exactly like the man whose face occasionally appears in the business magazines she forces herself not to read. Their eyes meet across the room. There is no flash of recognition in his gaze, no moment of shocked realization. Of course, not at the Amara he knew. Young, trusting, desperately in love, bears little resemblance to the woman who stands before him now. Her hair, once long and often worn in the soft styles he preferred, is now cut in a practical shoulder-length bob with distinguished streaks of premature grey she's chosen not to cover. The softness of youth has been replaced by the determined angles of a woman who has survived loss and emerged stronger. "Mr. Blake," she says, her voice professional and cool, betraying none of the emotion churning beneath the surface. "I'm Dr. Amara Johnson, Environmental Crisis Response Team." She offers her hand and he takes it without hesitation. Just a business handshake, firm, brief, impersonal. His hand feels the same, and for a disorienting moment, she is transported back to another life, another time, when those hands had traced the contours of her face with tenderness. "Richard Blake," he responds unnecessarily, everyone in the room already well aware of who he is. "I appreciate your quick response, but I think there's been some exaggeration about the severity of the situation. My team assures me—" "Your team has been falsifying safety reports for at least 3 years, Mr. Blake," Amara interrupts, sliding a folder across the table toward him. "The containment systems in Sector 7 are degraded well beyond acceptable levels, and the secondary containment infrastructure has never been properly tested. We're looking at a potential catastrophic release of chlorine gas and several toxic organic compounds that could affect a radius of up to 15 miles. The color drains from Richard's face, not at the revelation of corporate malfeasance. He has weathered such storms before, but at the clinical precision with which this stranger has laid bare facts his own team has failed to communicate effectively. "Who exactly authorized this investigation?" his lawyer interjects, reaching for the folder. "The EPA doesn't need authorization to investigate imminent environmental threats, Mr. Daniels, Henry Daniels, Chief Counsel for Blake Industries." "Mr. Daniels," Amara continues, "right now my only concern is preventing a disaster and protecting the people of Silver Creek. There will be plenty of time for legal discussions afterward." Richard studies her with growing curiosity and unease. There's something familiar about this woman that he can't quite place. Something in the direct way she meets his gaze without flinching. Something in the slight lift of her chin when she speaks with authority. "Have we met before, Dr. Johnson?" he asks suddenly, a heartbeat of silence, 10 years of pain, condensed into a single moment. "No, Mr. Blake," Amara lies, her expression giving away nothing. "I don't believe we have." Amara excuses herself from the meeting and enters a restroom, where she grips the sink tightly, staring at her reflection in the mirror as a single tear slides down her cheek before she quickly wipes it away. A time-lapse of the Emergency Operations Center as day turns to night, with Amara at the center of the activity, directing teams and analyzing data. The first 24 hours of crisis response are critical. Amara knows this better than most. Having written part of the federal guidelines on environmental disaster management, by midnight, she has established a command structure that even Richard Blake cannot override. though he has certainly tried. The mayor and town council have been swayed by Amara's expertise and the undeniable evidence she has presented. The State Governor's Office has declared an emergency, giving her team broad authority to implement necessary measures. And the press has descended on Silver Creek like vultures, hungry for details about the potential disaster and the woman who seems to have appeared from nowhere to take charge. In the makeshift command center, Amara works tirelessly, her focus, absolute maps, technical diagrams, air quality models, and evacuation plans surround her. She has barely eaten or rested, drawing energy from a well of determination that those around her find both impressive and slightly unnerving. Dr. Johnson, a young EPA colleague, approaches hesitantly. The preliminary tests from the perimeter sensors are back. It's worse than we thought. The benzene levels alone are... Show me, Amara says, extending her hand for the report, as she reviews the data. Her expression remains neutral, but her mind races with calculations and contingencies. The situation is deteriorating faster than anticipated. They may not have the 48 hours she initially estimated before a catastrophic release. Across the room, Richard Blake watches her with growing agitation. He has spent the evening on the phone with board members, investors, and his PR team. The company stock is already taking a hit, and the potential liability is astronomical. Yet something else nags at him, something about this woman who now controls the fate of his company and the town he has shaped to his liking. What do we know about her? He asks his assistant in a low voice. Dr. Amara Johnson, 36, environmental. Engineer with a specialization in chemical containment and disaster response, the assistant reads from a tablet. D. from MIT, recruited directly to the Federal Environmental Crisis Response Team. Impressive record, handled the Phoenix chemical fire, the Louisiana refinery collapse, even consulted on that nuclear event in Eastern Europe. Before that, where did she come from? The assistant scrolls through the information. Not much here, sir. Born in Georgia, education history starts about 10 years ago when she enrolled at MIT as a graduate student. Before that, there's a gap. Richard frowns. Everyone has a past. Dig deeper. As night turns to early morning, Amara finalizes the most crucial element of her plan, an emergency evacuation of the most vulnerable areas. The elderly care facility, the elementary school, the low-income housing complex on the east side. The same complex where she once lived, where neighbors had looked away in embarrassment after Richard left her. We need to start moving people out by dawn, she instructs the local authorities. Priority to those who can't transport themselves. The T. Mayor hesitates. That's nearly 2,000 people, Dr. Johnson. Where will they go? I've arranged for emergency shelters in neighboring counties, she responds, sliding a detailed logistics plan across the table. FEMA is sending supplies and medical support. It's all there. Richard, who has been observing from the periphery, steps forward. This is premature. You're going to cause a panic based on incomplete data. Would you prefer we wait until people are choking on chlorine gas, Mr. Blake? Amara counters, meeting his gaze directly. Because that's the alternative. Your plant is leaking. The containment systems are failing. And from what I've seen of the maintenance records that weren't falsified, this has been a disaster waiting to happen for years. Richard's jaw tightens. This woman, this stranger, is threatening everything he's built. Yet there's something disturbingly compelling about her conviction, about the way she speaks truth without hesitation. At least let me address the town, he says. These people know me, they trust me. Do they have reason to? Amara asks quietly, and for just a moment, something personal flashes in her eyes, something beyond professional criticism. Richard catches it, that brief glimpse of emotion, and it unsettles him more than her words. What is that supposed to mean? It means your company's negligence has put 12,000 lives at risk, Mr. Blake, she says, her professional veneer firmly back in place. Trust is earned through actions, not words. As dawn breaks over Silver Creek, the first evacuation buses begin to arrive. Amara has not slept, but shows no signs of fatigue as she coordinates the massive operation. Media outlets from across The country have descended on the small town, their satellite trucks lining Main Street as reporters compete for the best angle on what could become America's next great environmental disaster. And at the center of it all, two people with a shared past that only one of them remembers, bound together by a crisis that will either redeem or destroy them both. History starts about 10 years ago when she enrolled at MIT as a graduate student. Before that, there's a gap. Richard frowns. Everyone has a past. Dig deeper. As night turns to early morning, Amara finalizes the most crucial element of her plan, an emergency evacuation of the most vulnerable areas. The elderly care facility, the elementary school, the low-income housing complex on the east side, the same complex where she once lived, where neighbors had looked away in embarrassment after Richard left her. We need to start moving people out by dawn, she instructs the local authorities. Priority to those who can't transport themselves. The T. Mayor hesitates. That's nearly 2,000 people, Dr. Johnson. Where will they go? I've arranged for emergency shelters in neighboring counties, she responds, sliding a detailed logistics plan across the table. FEMA is sending supplies and medical support. It's all there. Richard, who has been observing from the periphery, steps forward. This is premature. You're going to cause a panic based on incomplete data. Would you prefer we wait until people are choking on chlorine gas, Mr. Blake? Amara counters, meeting his gaze directly. Because that's the alternative. Your plant is leaking, the containment systems are failing, and from what I've seen of the maintenance records that weren't falsified, this has been a disaster waiting to happen for years. Richard's jaw tightens. This woman, this stranger, is threatening everything he's built. Yet there's something disturbingly compelling about her conviction, about the way she speaks truth without hesitation. At least let me address the town, he says. These people know me, they trust me. Do they have reason to? Amara asks quietly, and for just a moment something personal flashes in her eyes, something beyond professional criticism. Richard catches it, that brief glimpse of emotion, and it unsettles him more than her words. What is that supposed to mean? It means your company's negligence has put 12,000 lives at risk, Mr. Blake, she says, her professional veneer firmly back in place. Trust is earned through actions, not words. As dawn breaks over Silver Creek, the first evacuation, buses begin to arrive. Amara has not slept but shows no signs of fatigue as she coordinates the massive operation. Media outlets from across the country have descended on the small town, their satellite trucks lining Main Street, as reporters compete for the best angle on what could become America's next great environmental disaster. And at the center of it all, two people with a shared past that only one of them remembers, bound together by a crisis that will either redeem or destroy them both. Amara and Richard enter the main floor of the chemical plant, both donning protective gear, their breath visible in the cool air as tension radiates between them. The morning sun casts long shadows through the massive steel structures of Silver Creek Chemical Industries as Amara leads an inspection team into the heart of the facility. Suited in hazmat gear, her movements are confident and deliberate as she examines gauges, takes readings, and directs her team to collect samples from critical areas. Richard Blake follows closely, his own protective suit marking him as an outsider in his own factory. He has insisted on accompanying the inspection, against the advice of his legal team, unwilling to cede complete control to this federal agent who seems determined to find fault with his operation. These containment vessels were upgraded less than 2 years ago, he says defensively as Amara scrutinizes a series of large tanks. We spared no expense. Amara doesn't look up from her tablet as she responds, The materials are first-rate, Mr. Blake. The installation was not... Look here. She points to a series of welds along a seam. These should have been continuous. Instead, they're spotty and already showing signs of stress fractures. For a moment, genuine confusion crosses Richard's face. That's not possible. I personally reviewed the contractor's work. Did you inspect every inch yourself? Amara asks, already knowing the answer. The Richard she knew was always more concerned with appearances than details. Or did you trust that your money had guaranteed quality? The barb hits its mark. Richard's expression hardens beneath the clear visor of his protective mask. "You seem to have formed some very specific opinions about me in a very short time, Dr. Johnson." "I form opinions based on evidence, Mr. Blake," she replies calmly. "And the evidence suggests a pattern of prioritizing profit over safety. The question is whether that pattern was born of greed or ignorance." Before Richard can respond, his plant manager approaches, visibly nervous even through the protective gear. "Mr. Blake, we've got reporters at the main gate. They're asking about evacuation orders and claiming we've known about leaks for months, but covered them up." Richard curses under his breath. "Who authorized these evacuation orders?" "We discussed waiting." "I did," Amara interrupts, "because waiting isn't an option. Every hour increases the risk of catastrophic failure." "This is my town," Richard says, his voice dropping to a dangerous whisper. "My company. My responsibility." "Then start acting responsible," Amara fires back, stepping closer until they're face to face, separated only by their protective visors. For an intense moment they stare at each other, Richard increasingly certain he knows this woman somehow, and Amara fighting the tide of memories his proximity evokes. "Sir," the plant manager interrupts anxiously, "what should I tell the press?" The spell breaks. Richard takes a step back, his business instincts taking over. "Tell them nothing. Get our PR team on site immediately." "They need to know the truth," Amara insists. "These people deserve to understand the danger they're in." "And they will," Richard counters, "once we have a complete assessment. Not before." As they continue their inspection, moving deeper into the facility, the evidence of neglect becomes increasingly undeniable. Corroded pipes, leaking valves, makeshift repairs that were clearly intended to be temporary but had become permanent. With each new discovery, Richard's confidence visibly erodes, replaced by a growing horror at what his company has become. "I didn't know," he says quietly, as they examine a particularly egregious safety violation, a pressure release valve that had been deliberately disabled. "I swear I didn't know it was this bad." For the first time, Amara sees a glimpse of the man she once loved, the idealistic entrepreneur who had dreamed of building something meaningful. But that glimpse only sharpens the pain of his betrayal. The man who had abandoned her pregnant and alone had also abandoned his own principles somewhere along the way. "Ignorance isn't a defense, Mr. Blake," she says, but her tone has softened slightly. "Not when lives are at stake." As they reach the central control room, alarms suddenly blare to life. Red warning lights flash across banks of monitors, and technicians scramble to make sense of the chaos. "Pressure spike in Sector 7, a technician shouts. "Containment systems failing." Amara rushes to the main console, pushing aside the stunned duty manager to access the controls herself. Her fingers fly across the keyboard, bringing up diagnostic screens and system overrides. "We need to initiate emergency venting," she commands. "Now!" "That will release chemicals into the atmosphere," protests the plant manager. "A controlled release is better than an explosion," Amara responds, not looking up from the console. "The alternative is losing the entire facility and contaminating the groundwater for decades." Richard watches her work, mesmerized by her competence in crisis. "Do what she says," he orders his hesitant staff. "Now." For 20 tense minutes, Amara works to stabilize the system, directing the plant's engineers with clear, precise instructions that leave no room for error. When the crisis is finally averted, the relief in the control room is palpable. "That was temporary," Amara tells Richard as they exit the control room. "A bandage on a wound that needs surgery. This plant needs to be shut down for major repairs before a full-scale disaster occurs." "Shutting down means laying off 300 workers," Richard argues. "This town depends on us. And what will this town be if it's rendered uninhabitable?" Amara challenges. "What good are jobs if people are sick or dying?" As they reach the main entrance and begin removing their protective gear, Richard's frustration boils over. "Who are you to come here and threaten everything I've built? You don't know what this town means to me, what these people mean to me." Amara removes her helmet, her eyes burning with a decade of suppressed rage, as she finally allows a fraction of her personal feelings to surface. "Don't I? Tell me, Mr. Blake, when was the last time you visited the East Side housing complex? Or the community clinic? Have you ever actually walked the neighborhoods where your workers live, or are they just numbers on a payroll to you? The personal nature of the attack catches Richard off guard. "You're overstepping, Dr. Johnson." "No," she says quietly. "I'm just doing what you never could, putting people before profit." As they exit the plant, reporters surge forward, cameras flashing. Richard instinctively steps in front of Amara, shielding her from the press, as he once might have done protectively rather than territorially. "Mr. Blake, is it true your company falsified safety reports?" shouts one reporter. "Dr. Johnson, how severe is the chemical leak?" Calls another. In the chaos of shouted questions and blinding camera flashes, Richard feels a strange sense of déjà vu as he notices Amara unconsciously reach for the teardrop pendant at her throat, a nervous habit he associates with someone from long ago. The realization sends a chill down his spine as pieces begin to fall into place. But before he can process this, his security team pushes through the crowd, creating a path to his waiting car. "This isn't finished," he tells Amara as they're separated by the crowd. "No," she agrees, her eyes revealing nothing. "It's only just beginning." Back at the emergency command center, Amara removes her jacket, revealing a small, faded scar on her forearm, the same scar Richard once traced with his fingertips as they lay in bed discussing their future. By evening, Silver Creek has become a town divided. The emergency evacuation has begun for the most vulnerable areas, but many residents resist leaving their homes, some out of stubborn independence, others out of misplaced loyalty to Richard. Blake and the company that has provided their livelihoods for decades. At the hastily organized town hall meeting in the high school gymnasium, emotions run high. Mayor Reynolds struggles to maintain order as angry voices shout over one another. On one side of the room, workers from the plant defend their employer, afraid that too much negative attention might cost them their jobs. On the other, parents of young children and environmental activists demand accountability and immediate action. Seated at a table on the stage, Amara watches the discord with a heavy heart. This is exactly what she had hoped to avoid, a community tearing itself apart when it should be uniting in crisis. Beside her, representatives from FEMA, the EPA, and the state's environmental agency shift uncomfortably as the meeting devolves into chaos. A middle-aged woman rises from the audience, her voice cutting through the din. "My husband has worked at that plant for 18 years. Blake Industries put our kids through college. Where was the federal government then when we needed jobs? Now you swoop in and want to shut everything down." Murmurs of agreement ripple through one section of the crowd. Another resident stands, this one a young mother with a toddler on her hip. "My daughter has been hospitalized twice this year with respiratory problems. The doctors can't explain it, but our house is less than a mile from that plant. If they've been releasing chemicals secretly, doesn't that matter more than jobs?" "It's not either or," Amara says, rising to address the crowd. Her voice, though not raised, somehow commands attention. "You deserve both safe jobs and a safe community. Mr. Blake's company has failed to provide that balance, but this doesn't have to define Silver Creek's future." The gymnasium doors swing open and Richard Blake enters, flanked by his executive team. The crowd's reaction is immediate, applause from his supporters, icy glares from his critics. He moves with practiced confidence down the center aisle, nodding acknowledgments to familiar faces. "My friends and neighbors," he begins, his voice projecting easily to the furthest corners of the room. "I understand your concerns and your fears. Silver Creek Chemical Industries has been the backbone of this community for 20 years. Many of you have built your lives around the opportunities we've created together." He pauses, his gaze sweeping the room before continuing. "I'm here tonight to personally assure you that your safety is my highest priority. Yes, there have been issues at the plant, serious issues that I was not fully aware of until today's inspection." From her position on the stage, Amara watches him with a mixture of skepticism and grudging respect. He's always been a masterful communicator, able to win people over with seemingly heartfelt words. It was one of the things that had drawn her to him all those years ago, his ability to paint a vision so compelling that you couldn't help but believe in it. And in him. Effective immediately, Richard continues, I am ordering a temporary shutdown of all non-essential operations at the plant. Essential safety personnel will remain on site to work with Dr. Johnson and her team to address the immediate concerns. All affected employees will receive full pay and benefits during this period. A buzz of surprise ripples through the crowd. This is not what anyone expected, least of all Amara, who finds herself momentarily speechless at this apparent surrender. Furthermore, Richard adds, I'm establishing a community oversight committee to ensure complete transparency as we move forward with necessary repairs and upgrades. Silver Creek built this company, and Silver Creek deserves a voice in its future. The room erupts in applause, and Amara watches in disbelief as Richard Blake transforms himself in the space of a 5-minute speech from potential villain to magnanimous community savior. It's a masterful performance, and she knows firsthand how convincing his promises can be and how easily broken. As the meeting continues, residents approach the microphone with questions and concerns. Richard handles each with apparent sincerity and openness, deferring technical questions to his team or to Amara herself. The tension in the room gradually dissipates, replaced by a cautious optimism. When the meeting finally concludes, Amara finds herself approached by Richard as the crowd disperses. I'd like to thank you, Dr. Johnson, he says, extending his hand. Your direct approach today forced some difficult but necessary conversations. Amara accepts the handshake briefly, painfully aware of the cameras documenting their apparent reconciliation. Don't thank me yet, Mr. Blake. Words are easy. I'll be watching to ensure your actions match your promises. A flash of annoyance crosses his face, quickly masked by a practiced smile. Then perhaps we should discuss next steps over dinner. My team and yours working together for Silver Creek's future. This isn't a negotiation or a business deal, Amara replies coolly. It's a federal intervention in a potential environmental disaster. We'll meet at the command center at 7 tomorrow morning to review progress. She turns to leave, but Richard catches her arm, the familiarity of his touch sending an unwelcome jolt through her body. Have we met before today? He asks, directly, his voice low enough that only she can hear. There's something familiar about you that I can't shake. Amara carefully removes his hand from her arm, her expression revealing nothing of the turmoil within. I have a very common face, Mr. Blake. Now, if you'll excuse me, I have an evacuation to coordinate. As she walks away, Richard watches, her with growing certainty that he knows this woman, or knew her once in another life. The way she tilts her head when considering a response, the slight furrow between her brows when she's focusing intensely, the unconscious habit of touching that pendant when she's stressed. And suddenly, like a key turning in a rusty lock, a memory surfaces, a young woman with hopeful eyes and a shy smile, nervously playing with a teardrop necklace as she told him she was pregnant. No, it couldn't be. That woman, what was her name? Alicia, had disappeared years ago after their brief relationship ended. This accomplished federal agent couldn't possibly be the same person. Could she? In her hotel room, Amara sits on the edge of the bed, phone in hand, staring at an old photo on the screen. A much younger version of herself with Richard, his hand protectively resting on her still flat stomach, both smiling with the innocent optimism of youth. The Silver Creek Grand Hotel, once a modest motel that Richard had transformed into a boutique destination for business travelers, provides little comfort to Amara as she attempts to rest after 36 hours of crisis management. Every corner of this town contains memories she'd rather forget, and the hotel is no exception. They had celebrated their engagement in the restaurant downstairs, planning their future over champagne and ambitious dreams. In her room, Amara reviews the day's developments on her laptop, struggling to maintain professional detachment. Richard's unexpected cooperation at the town hall has complicated matters. She had prepared for opposition, for a villain to confront. Instead, he had been reasonable, adaptable, and worse. He had started to remember her. A text illuminates her phone screen. Package delivered to room 412 as requested. The equipment she needs to monitor air quality from the hotel. She can't afford to miss any critical changes overnight. Slipping into the hallway, Amara walks quickly to the supply room, keycard in hand. As she rounds the corner, she collides with a hotel employee, a woman in her 60s with kind eyes and grey hair pulled into a neat bun. "I'm so sorry," Amara begins, then freezes as recognition dawns. "Mrs. Winters." The older woman squints, then gasps softly. "Lord have mercy. Amara Davis, was that really you?" Elsie Winters had been the hotel's head housekeeper for as long as Amara could remember. When Amara had worked the front desk during college, Elsie had taken her under her wing, offering maternal advice and support that Amara's own mother, long deceased, could not. "It's Johnson now," Amara corrects gently. "Amara Johnson." "Child, we all thought you'd left for good," Elsie says, her eyes taking in Amara's transformation. "After what happened with Richard, no one would have blamed you. But to come back now with all this trouble at the plant, does he know who you are?" "No," Amara says quickly. "And I'd like to keep it that way if you don't mind." Elsie studies her face for a long moment. "You're here for the chemical spill, aren't you? I saw you on the news, some kind of government expert." "Yeah, it's my job now, fixing environmental disasters." A knowing look crosses the older woman's face. "And this one just happens to involve Richard Blake. That's not a coincidence, is it?" Amara sighs. Elsie had always been perceptive. "I was assigned to this case. I didn't choose it." "But you didn't refuse it either," Elsie points out. "After everything he put you through." Memories flood back, Elsie comforting a devastated pregnant Amara after Richard left, helping her pack her meager belongings for a desperate new start elsewhere. Elsie had been one of the few people in Silver Creek who had shown genuine concern. When Amara's world collapsed, "I have a job to do," Amara says firmly. "What happened between Richard and me was a long time ago." Elsie's expression softens with sympathy. "The past has a way of staying with us, child, especially the painful parts." She pauses, then adds carefully, "He looked for you, you know, about a year after you left. Came asking questions, wanted to know where you'd gone." This revelation hits Amara like a physical blow. What? Why would he do that?" "I couldn't say," Elsie shrugs. "Maybe conscience finally caught up with him, or maybe he realized what he'd thrown away. Either way, you were long gone by then." Across town in the executive suite of Blake Industries Tower, Richard sits alone, surrounded by the trappings of success that have defined his life for the past decade. The room features awards, photographs with politicians, and celebrities and mementos of business triumphs. But tonight, his attention is focused on a dusty box retrieved from personal storage, a box he hasn't opened in years. Inside are remnants of a different life. College textbooks, early business plans, scribbled on napkins and buried beneath it all a small velvet box containing a simple engagement ring. The ring he had given to Amara Davis, the girl from the wrong side of town whose quiet intelligence and unwavering belief in him had once been the foundation of his world. "Amara," he whispers, the name feeling both foreign and achingly familiar on his tongue. "Amara Davis." He types the name into his laptop, searching for any trace of what had happened to her after she disappeared from Silver Creek and from his life. But the search yields nothing useful. It's as if she vanished completely, reinventing herself elsewhere. Could Dr. Amara Johnson and Amara Davis be the same person? The timing would fit. The physical resemblance, though transformed by the passage of time and perhaps deliberate changes, is certainly possible. And there had been moments today when her eyes had held a knowledge of him that a stranger shouldn't possess, an intimate understanding of his tactics and tells. If it is her, what does she want now? Revenge. Justice. The thought sends a chill through him. Amara knows things about him, about his past, his vulnerabilities, his secrets, that could undermine everything he's built. Richard reaches for his phone, about to call his head of security to request a deeper background check on Dr. Johnson, but hesitates. If his suspicions are correct, Digging into her past might only accelerate a confrontation he's not prepared for. And if she is indeed the woman he had once promised to marry, the woman who had carried his child, there are questions he's not sure he wants answered. What happened to their baby? Why did she disappear without a trace? And most troubling of all, how much of the caring, ambitious young man she had known still exists within the powerful executive he has become? Setting the phone down, Richard instead pours himself a generous glass of scotch and moves to the floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking Silver Creek. The town lights spread out below him, including the distant glow of the plant. His creation, his legacy, now potentially his downfall. And somewhere in those lights is a woman from his past who has returned like a ghost, wielding the power to save or destroy everything he values. Morning light streams through the emergency operations center as Amara briefs her team, unaware that Richard stands in the doorway, watching her with new recognition in his eyes. Richard watches from a distance as Amara kneels to comfort an elderly resident being evacuated. The tenderness in her interaction revealing a side of her that confirms his growing suspicions. Dawn breaks over Silver Creek with an ominous red sky. Nature's warning of the danger still hovering over the town. The evacuation has expanded overnight as new air quality readings showed the chemical plume shifting with the wind, threatening previously safe neighborhoods. At the community center that now serves as an evacuation shelter, Amara works tirelessly, coordinating resources and personally assisting the most vulnerable residents. Her professional veneer occasionally slips, revealing glimpses of a deeper connection to this place and its people than her official role would suggest. She doesn't notice Richard's arrival, doesn't see him watching her from across the crowded gymnasium as she kneels beside an elderly woman, gently explaining that her medication has been retrieved from her home by emergency workers. "You don't remember me, do you, dear?" the old woman asks, squinting up at Amara. "I used to bring my grandson to the hotel when you worked the front desk. Such a sweet girl you were." Amara smiles, squeezing the woman's hand. "Of course I remember, Mrs. Bennet. Tommy always wanted the room with the view of the trains." The old woman beams, delighted to be remembered. "That's right. He loves those trains still, even now that he's all grown up. He's in Indianapolis. Now an engineer, if you can believe it. Not trains, computers, or some such." She leans closer, lowering her voice to a conspiratorial whisper. "I always thought it was a shame what happened between you and Richard Blake. Everyone could see how much you loved each other before the money changed him." Amara's smile falters slightly, but she maintains her composure. "That was a lifetime ago, Mrs. Bennet. We all made our choices. Some choices leave deeper marks than others," the old woman observes with the blunt wisdom of age. Richard, close enough now to overhear the exchange, feels the last pieces of doubt crumble away. It is her, Amara Davis, his first love, the woman he had abandoned when his fledgling business began to take off, when wealthy investors and their daughters had turned his head with visions of a different future than the modest life they had planned together. The memory of their last conversation floods back with painful clarity. Amara, tears streaming down her face, one hand protectively covering her belly as she begged him to reconsider. "This is your child, Richard. Our child. How can you just walk away from us?" His cruel, dismissive response haunts him even now. "I'm not ready to be a father. I've got a company to build. You'll be fine. You're strong. You've always been the strong one." The callousness of his younger self makes him wince. He had told himself for years that she was indeed strong enough to move on without him, that she had probably found someone else, built a good life. It had been easier than confronting the magnitude of his betrayal. Looking at her now, accomplished, respected, powerful in her own right, he feels an uncomfortable mixture of pride and shame. She had become exceptional, not because of him, but despite what he had done to her. Gathering his courage, Richard approaches as Amara rises to her feet, having assured Mrs. Bennet that her cat is being well cared for at the emergency pet shelter. "Dr. Johnson," he says formally, though his eyes convey a different message: recognition, regret, uncertainty. Amara stiffens, immediately sensing a change in his demeanor. "Mr. Blake, I wasn't expecting you this morning." "I think we need to talk," he says quietly. "Privately." Alarm flashes across her features, quickly masked by professional reserve. I'm rather busy, as you can see. Perhaps later this afternoon. Amara, he says, her name soft but unmistakable. She freezes, her worst fear realized. He knows. After all her careful planning, all her efforts to keep their past separate from her professional responsibilities, he has recognized her. For a long moment, they simply stare at each other, the buzz of the evacuation center fading into background noise. Two people with a shared history that has shaped their lives in profoundly different ways, now forced to acknowledge that connection amid a crisis that affects thousands. Not here, she finally says, her voice barely above a whisper. And not now, these people need our help. They do, Richard agrees, surprising her with his restraint. And they'll get it. But afterward, we need to talk about everything. Amara nods curtly, then turns away, calling to a FEMA coordinator about additional supplies needed at the North Shelter. Her heart pounds in her chest, but her voice remains steady, her focus unwavering. She has prepared for this moment, rehearsed it countless times in her mind. Yet now that it has arrived, she finds herself surprisingly calm. Let him remember. Let him know exactly who is standing. Between his company and complete disaster, let him face at last the woman he discarded and the strength he never valued until it was positioned against him. Throughout the morning, they work in parallel, Amara directing the federal response, Richard mobilizing company resources to support the evacuation efforts. They move in the same spaces, occasionally making eye contact across rooms, each aware of the conversation that awaits them, each preparing in their own way. By mid-afternoon, the immediate crisis has stabilized. The evacuation is complete. Temporary containment measures at the plant are holding, and the first round of emergency repairs has begun under the supervision of Amara's technical team. There are no more excuses to delay the inevitable. My office in 30 minutes, Richard says as they pass each other in a corridor of the Emergency Operations Center. Not a question, a statement. The Federal Command Center, Amara counters, unwilling to cede even this small advantage by meeting on his territory. Conference Room B, he nods, accepting her terms without argument. When they finally face each other across the conference table, the room deliberately cleared of other personnel. The weight of a decade's unspoken words hangs between them. How long have you known? Amara asks, breaking the silence. With certainty, and since this morning, Richard replies. I've had suspicions since yesterday. You've changed, but not completely. People rarely do, she says pointedly. He accepts the barb with a slight nod. Why didn't you tell me who you were from the beginning? Would it have made a difference? She challenges. Would you have taken the crisis more seriously if you knew it was your ex-fiancé pointing out your company's failures? Ex-fiancé, he repeats, the term sounding strangely formal for what they had been to each other. Is that how you think of me? Just an ex? Amara's composure falters momentarily. How should I think of you, Richard? The man who left me pregnant and alone. The man whose absence nearly destroyed me. What term would you prefer? Her directness lands like a physical blow. Richard seems to shrink slightly under the weight of her words. I've thought about you over the years, he admits quietly. Wondered what happened to you. To the baby. A flash of raw pain crosses Amara's face. Have you... How nice. I wish I could say the same, that I had the luxury of just occasionally wondering about you, but you were everywhere, in business magazines, on television, your name on buildings. There was no escaping the reminder of what you became after. You decided we weren't worth your time. I was young and stupid, Richard says, running a hand through his hair in a gesture so familiar it makes Amara's heart ache despite herself. Blinded by ambition and the validation of people I thought mattered, I've regretted it. Don't. Amara interrupts sharply. Don't tell me about your regrets, that they're meaningless now. What happened to our child? He asks, the question he's both dreaded and needed to ask, hanging in the air between them. Amara's eyes fill with tears. She refuses to let fall. There is no child, Richard. There hasn't been for 10 years. The implications of her statement. hit him with devastating force. "What do you mean? Did you—" "I lost the baby," she says, her voice hollow. "Third month, that's after weeks of stress, inadequate prenatal care because I couldn't afford a doctor, and working 2 jobs because suddenly I had to support myself. The doctor said sometimes these things just happen, but we both knew better." Richard looks stricken, all color draining from his face. "Amara, I'm so sorry. I didn't know—" "How could you—" "You were busy building an empire," she says bitterly. "I tried to reach you. I called your office, your parents, everyone I could think of. No one would put me through. By the time I miscarried, I had already accepted that I was on my own. I would have helped if I'd known," he insists. "Would you?" she challenges. "The Richard I knew at the end, the one who walked out. I'm not sure he would have cared." The harsh assessment lands like a slap. Richard winces, but doesn't deny it. "You're probably right. I became someone I'm not proud of. Success changed me, and not for the better." For the first time, Amara sees genuine remorse in his eyes, not just for her discovery of his identity, but for the man he had allowed himself to become. It doesn't excuse his actions, doesn't erase the pain he caused, but it's something real amid the practiced corporate responses he's offered until now. "This doesn't change anything about why I'm here," she says firmly. "My job is to contain this crisis and hold your company accountable. Our history is irrelevant to that mission." "Is it?" Richard asks quietly. "Can you honestly say you would have approached this assignment the same way if it had been any other company, any other CEO?" The question catches Amara off guard. Has her personal connection influenced her professional judgment? She has prided herself on her objectivity, her commitment to doing what's right regardless of personal cost. But sitting across from the man who broke her heart a decade ago, can she truly claim complete impartiality? "I've been harder on you," she admits after a moment's reflection. "More demanding, but the facts remain the same. Your plant is dangerous. Your management practices have been negligent, and people could die if we don't fix this properly." Richard nods slowly. "Then let's fix it. Together. No more opposition, no more corporate stonewalling. Full transparency and cooperation." "Just like that?" Amara asks skeptically. "Just like that," he confirms. "Whatever resources you need, whatever access you require, I'll sign whatever you put in front of me." Amara studies his face, looking for signs of manipulation or deceit. But all she sees is exhaustion, regret, and something else. A desperate need for redemption. Why the sudden change of heart? Richard's answer comes slowly, thoughtfully. "Because when I look at what my company has become, what I've become, I don't recognize myself anymore. Maybe this crisis is my wake-up call. Maybe seeing you again, knowing what I threw away. It's forcing me to confront some hard truths." "Pretty words," Amara observes. "But I've heard your pretty words before." "Then judge me by my actions," he challenges. "Starting now." As their conversation concludes, neither notices the blinking light of an active recording device hidden beneath the conference room table, placed there by someone who sees opportunity in their reconnection and the secrets of their shared past. A news report shows the evacuation efforts, followed by a split-screen image of Richard and Amara working separately but simultaneously to address the crisis, as a reporter speculates about the seemingly tense relationship between the corporate CEO and the federal agent. A close-up of a hand placing a flash drive into a computer, followed by the playback of the private conversation between Amara and Richard in the conference room. 2 days into the crisis, Silver Creek has become a media spectacle. News vans line the main street. Reporters deliver breathless updates against the backdrop of the partially evacuated town, and drones capture footage of workers in hazmat suits conducting emergency repairs at the chemical plant. In a suite at the Silver Creek Grand Hotel, Howard Westfield, Blake Industries plant manager and Richard's right-hand man for nearly 15 years, watches the recorded conversation between his boss and Dr. Johnson with growing interest. The hidden recording device had been a precaution, a way to monitor federal overreach and protect the company's interests. What it captured instead was far more valuable. "The man who left me pregnant and alone." Amara's voice plays through. the speakers crisp and clear. Howard pauses the recording, a slow smile spreading across his face. This changes everything. The federal agent leading the investigation against Blake Industries isn't just any government official. She's Richard's scorned ex-fiancée with a personal vendetta. The potential conflict of interest is enormous, the possibilities for leverage limitless. For years, Howard has watched as Richard Blake took credit for his ideas, accepted accolades for his solutions, and built a fortune while keeping him at high arm's length from real power. Invaluable, Richard called him, but never invaluable enough to offer a partnership or equity in the company. Now, finally, he holds something that could change the balance of power. Across town, unaware of this new threat, Amara conducts a briefing with her technical team at the command center. The latest test results show marginal improvement in the containment systems, but significant work remains before the plant can be considered safe. The northwestern sector is still showing dangerous levels of benzene, she explains, pointing to a map of the facility. And these pressure readings are well above acceptable parameters. We're making progress, but we're not out of the danger zone. As the team disperses to continue their work, Amara notices a familiar face entering the command center. Elsie Winters, the hotel housekeeper, who had been one of her few allies in the difficult days after Richard left her. Elsie. "What are you doing here?" Amara asks, surprised to see the older woman in this setting. Elsie approaches, concern etched on her weathered face. "I need to talk to you, child. Privately." They step into a small office off the main operations floor, closing the door behind them. "What's wrong?" Amara asks, immediately sensing trouble. "I overheard something at the hotel this morning. That plant manager of Richard's, Westfield, he was on the phone, talking about you and Richard, about your history together." Amara's heart sinks. What exactly did he say? He was talking to someone about how he had proof that you were biased against the company because of your personal connection to Richard, that you had a conflict of interest that could invalidate the whole federal investigation. The implication is clear and devastating. If Westfield can prove Amara's personal connection to Richard influenced her professional judgment, her entire career could be jeopardized, not just her role in this case. How would he have proof of anything? Amara wonders aloud, then freezes. As realization dawns, the conference room. "Our conversation yesterday wasn't as private as we thought," Elsie nods grimly. "He mentioned a recording." Amara closes her eyes briefly, calculating the potential damage. Her conversation with Richard had been deeply personal and emotionally charged. While she hadn't said anything that directly compromised her professional integrity, the raw anger and pain she had expressed could easily be twisted to suggest bias. "Thank you for telling me," she says to Elsie. "I need to handle this immediately." "Be careful," the older woman warns. Westfield has always been jealous of Richard. If he sees a way to hurt him and advance himself, he won't hesitate. After Elsie leaves, Amara makes 2 calls, one to her supervisor at the federal agency, proactively disclosing her past connection to Richard Blake before Westfield can weaponize the information, and another to Richard himself, warning him of his plant manager's apparent betrayal. "He recorded our private conversation." Richard's disbelief is evident even through the phone. "How did he even know we were meeting?" "That's not important right now," Amara responds tersely. "What matters is that he's apparently planning to use it against both of us. I've already informed my agency about our history, so that's contained from my end. But you need to be prepared for whatever he's planning." "I'll deal with Howard," Richard assures her, his voice hardening. This ends now, but Westfield has already set his plan in motion. By mid-afternoon, selected portions of the recording, carefully edited to maximize impact while obscuring the context, have been leaked to key media outlets. The narrative is crafted perfectly. A federal agent with a personal grudge against Richard Blake, using her government authority to pursue a decade-old vendetta. As news of the scandal breaks, both Amara and Richard find themselves under siege. Reporters ambush them at every turn, shouting invasive questions. "Dr. Johnson, did you deliberately conceal your relationship with Richard Blake when you accepted this assignment?" "Mr. Blake, Did you abandon Dr. Johnson when she was pregnant? With your child. Is it true that your unborn child died as a result of your abandonment, Mr. Blake? Each question cuts deeper than the last, exposing wounds that have never fully healed for either of them. In the chaos that follows, Amara is temporarily relieved of her duties pending an internal review, despite her proactive disclosure. Richard faces a board of directors suddenly concerned about a potential PR nightmare and shareholders nervous about liability. And Westfield, watching from the shadows, prepares to present himself as the solution to the company's problems, the loyal executive untainted by scandal, who can restore stability and public trust. That evening, as a dejected Amara packs her belongings in the hotel room, preparing to be replaced by another federal agent, she receives an unexpected visitor. Richard appears at her door looking as exhausted and defeated as she feels. "May I come in?" he asks quietly. She hesitates, then steps aside, allowing him to enter. They stand awkwardly in the small room, two people whose lives have become public fodder, whose private pain now serves as entertainment for a voracious news cycle. "I fired Howard," Richard says simply. "And I've called an emergency board meeting for tomorrow morning. I'm going to tell them everything, about the plant safety issues, about how I've lost sight of what matters. No more cover-ups, no more damage control." Amara studies his face, looking for signs of the calculating businessman planning his next strategic move. Instead, she sees only genuine remorse and determination. "Why tell me this?" she asks. "Because, despite everything, you're the only person who's ever really known me," he admits. "The real me before the money and the power changed everything, and I hoped, you might see that I'm trying to find my way back to being that person again." The sincerity in his voice stirs something in Amara she thought long dead. Not love or forgiveness, but perhaps a reluctant recognition that people can change, that redemption might be possible, even for someone who has caused so much hurt. Before she can respond, her phone rings, her supervisor calling with unexpected news. After a brief conversation, she turns back to Richard, her expression a mixture of surprise and cautious hope. "That was my director. They've reviewed the full recording. Apparently, Westfield sent the entire unedited version to them, thinking the complete conversation would damn me further. Instead, they've determined that I've acted with complete professional integrity throughout the crisis. I'm being reinstated, effective, immediately." That's good news," Richard says, genuinely pleased, despite the implications for himself and his company. "You deserve to be recognized for the work you've done here. Without you, this could have been so much worse." As they stand there, two people with a complicated past now facing an uncertain future, an urgent knock at the door interrupts the moment. A junior member of Amara's team enters, breathless with alarm. "Dr. Johnson, Mr. Blake. There's been a development at the plant. Multiple containment systems are failing simultaneously. The emergency repairs aren't holding. We need you both right away." The personal drama that has consumed them must now take a back seat to the very real danger threatening Silver Creek. As they rush to respond to this new crisis, neither notices the figure watching from the shadows of the hotel corridor. Howard Westfield, his face contorted with rage at the failure of his scheme and the loss of his position. If he can't have Blake Industries, he thinks darkly, perhaps no one should. Emergency lights flash across the darkened chemical plant as alarms blare, while security camera footage shows a shadowy figure tampering with critical equipment in a restricted area. Multiple alarms blare throughout the chemical plant as emergency lights cast an eerie red glow over panic-stricken workers running toward exits. Night falls over Silver Creek as a new and more immediate danger emerges. What had appeared to be a gradual failure of containment systems has suddenly accelerated into a catastrophic cascade of equipment malfunctions. Emergency response teams rush to the plant as sensors detect rapidly increasing levels of toxic chemicals in multiple sectors. In the Emergency Operations Center, Amara and Richard stand side by side, watching in horror as monitoring screens display the rapidly deteriorating situation. Red warning icons multiply across the digital plant schematic, indicating failures far too numerous and simultaneous to be coincidental. "This isn't a system failure," Amara says, her voice tight with urgency. "This is deliberate sabotage." Richard's face hardens as the same realization strikes him. "Howard, it has to be. We need to evacuate the remaining plant personnel immediately," Amara orders, turning to the crisis team. "And alert law enforcement that we have an active saboteur." As emergency protocols activate, Amara and Richard make a decision that surprises the assembled officials. They will personally enter the facility to try to manually override the compromised systems. No one else understands both the plant's design and the nature of the threat as well as they do together. "This is my responsibility," Richard insists when objections are raised. "My company, my plant, and my expertise," Amara adds firmly. "We don't have time to debate this." Donning protective gear, they enter the plant as most others are rushing out. The air inside already carries a chemical tang that penetrates even their respirators, and visibility is reduced by a fine mist leaking from damaged pipes. "We need to reach the central control room," Richard says, leading the way through corridors he knows intimately. "From there, we can attempt to isolate the affected sectors." As they navigate the increasingly hazardous environment, their shared focus on survival temporarily bridges the gulf of their past. They move with the coordinated efficiency of people who once knew each other deeply, anticipating each other's movements and decisions without need for constant communication. In the control room, the extent of the sabotage becomes clear. Critical safety protocols have been overridden, backup systems disabled, emergency vents sealed. Whoever did this knew exactly how to maximize damage while minimizing the possibility of intervention. "He's been planning this for some time," Richard says grimly as they assess the situation. "This isn't impulsive, it's methodical. Can we restore the safety systems?" Amara asks, already scanning the control panels for options. "Not remotely, not with the overrides he's installed. We'd need to manually reset the primary containment valves in Sector 7. Richard points to a location on the facility schematic. "But the chemical concentration there is probably already at dangerous levels. Our gear will protect us for short exposure," Amara says, checking the monitors. "But we'll have only minutes before it becomes unsafe even with protection." They lock eyes, both understanding the risk they're about to take. In this moment, they aren't former lovers or professional adversaries. They're simply two people, standing between a town and disaster. "Let's go," Amara says, and Richard nods with grim determination. As they make their way deeper into the facility, the conditions deteriorate rapidly. Warning lights flash, emergency announcements echo through empty corridors, and the air grows increasingly thick with chemical haze. Their respirators provide limited protection, but they can already feel the effects of exposure. Burning eyes, lightheadedness, difficulty focusing. "Almost there," Richard says, his voice strained through the respirator mask. "The main valve control station is just ahead." They turn a corner and freeze. Standing at the valve control panel, clearly engaged in further sabotage, is Howard Westfield. He looks up in shock at their approach, clearly not expecting anyone to have ventured this deep into the compromised facility. "It's over, Howard," Richard calls out, his voice muffled but firm through his respirator. "Step away from the controls." Howard laughs, a sound devoid of humor and tinged with madness. "Over. It's just beginning, Richard. Do you have any idea what it's been like? 15 years watching you take credit for my work, my innovations. 15 years being the loyal soldier while you built an empire on my ideas." "This isn't about Richard," Amara interjects, taking a careful step forward. "You're endangering the lives of thousands of innocent people. Whatever grievance you have—" "Oh, look who it is," Howard sneers, focusing on Amara. "The abandoned fiancé, back from the past. How perfect that you two found each other again, just in time to watch everything crumble." "The only thing crumbling is your future, Howard," Richard responds. "Even if you leave right now, you'll face federal charges for environmental terrorism. But if you help us stop this, I'll do everything in my power to get you leniency." Howard's laugh turns bitter. "You still don't get it, do you? I don't want your help or your leniency. I want you to lose everything, just like I did when you passed me over for partnership 3 years ago. Just like she did." He nods. "Toward Amara, when you walked out on her. We've both been discarded by the great Richard Blake, and now it's time for you to pay." As he speaks, Howard reaches behind him and pulls out a pistol, aiming it first at Richard, then at Amara. "Neither of you is stopping anything. This plant will fail catastrophically, and Blake Industries will be destroyed. And if the great environmental hero and the town's beloved benefactor die trying to prevent it, that's just poetic justice." The standoff is interrupted by a loud mechanical groan from somewhere deep in the facility, followed by the screech of metal under extreme pressure. Howard's sabotage is accelerating faster than even he anticipated. "That's the primary containment vessel," Richard says with alarm. "If it ruptures, everyone in a 5-mile radius could be exposed to lethal levels of chemicals," Amara finishes, her professional knowledge confirming his fears. Howard's expression flickers with the first hint of doubt. He had intended to damage the company, to ruin Richard, but perhaps not to cause mass casualties. That momentary hesitation is all Richard needs. He lunges forward, tackling Howard to the ground. The gun discharges, the shot going wild, as the two men grapple on the floor. "Get to the override controls," Richard shouts to Amara as he struggles to subdue his former colleague. "I'll handle Howard." Amara rushes to the control panel, her trained eyes quickly assessing the sabotage and identifying the critical systems that must be restored. Her fingers fly over the controls, inputting emergency override codes and rerouting containment protocols. Behind her, the struggle between Richard and Howard has become desperate. Despite his age and desk-bound position, Howard fights with the strength of a man consumed by revenge. He manages to break free of Richard's grip, scrambling to retrieve the fallen gun. "Amara, watch out!" Richard yells as Howard raises the weapon, aiming directly at her back. Without hesitation, Richard throws himself toward Howard again, just as the man pulls the trigger. The shot rings out, and Richard staggers, clutching his shoulder where the bullet has struck him. Blood seeps between his fingers, soaking his protective suit, but his intervention gives Amara the precious seconds she needs to complete the emergency override sequence. Alarms change their tone, and the facility's automated voice announces, "Emergency containment protocol engaged. Venting systems activated." Howard, seeing his plan unraveling, makes a desperate lunge toward another control panel, one that could potentially override even Amara's emergency protocols. Richard, despite his injury, intercepts him, using his remaining strength to restrain the saboteur. "It's finished, Howard," he gasps, the pain evident in his voice. "Let it go." Amara rushes to assist, helping Richard secure Howard until authorities can reach them. But as the immediate threat of sabotage recedes, a new danger becomes apparent. Richard's protective suit has been compromised by the gunshot wound, and he's now directly exposed to the chemical agents still present in the air. "We need to get you out of here," Amara says urgently, supporting his weight as he begins to show signs of exposure. Disorientation, labored breathing, skin reddening around the tear in his suit. "What about him?" Richard asks weakly, nodding. Toward Howard. "Security is on the way," she assures him, having radioed for assistance. "Right now you're the priority." As they make their slow, difficult journey back through the facility, Richard's condition deteriorates rapidly. The combination of blood loss and chemical exposure is taking a severe toll. By the time they reach the decontamination chamber at the facility's entrance, he can barely stand. Emergency medical personnel are waiting to transport Richard to the hospital, but before he's taken away, he clutches Amara's hand with surprising strength. "I need to tell you something," he says, his voice raspy and strained. "In case I don't say it," Amara interrupts, tears forming despite her efforts to maintain composure. "You're going to be fine. This isn't how our story ends." His eyes hold hers with an intensity that reaches across the years, across all the pain and distance. "I've never stopped," he begins, but a violent coughing fit interrupts his words, and the medical team insists they can wait no longer. As Richard is rushed to the hospital, Amara remains behind to oversee the final stabilization of the plant. The sabotage has been contained, but the facility has sustained significant damage that will take months to repair properly. Howard Westfield has been taken into custody, facing multiple federal charges for his actions. By dawn, the immediate crisis has passed. The town is safe, though the evacuation orders remain in place until final air quality tests can confirm there is no lingering danger. Amara, having completed her essential duties, finally allows herself to be driven to the hospital where Richard's condition remains critical. In the hospital waiting room, she finds an unexpected gathering. Richard's executive team, the mayor, town council members, and ordinary citizens of Silver Creek, all waiting for news about the man whose company has dominated their lives for 2 decades. The mood is somber. The conversation's hushed. Mayor Reynolds approaches Amara, extending his hand in gratitude. "Dr. Johnson, I don't know how to thank you for what you've done. Without your intervention—" "I was just doing my job," she says automatically, though they both know it was far more than that. "Mr. Blake," the mayor continues hesitantly, "is he going to make it?" "The doctors aren't certain," Amara admits, the professional mask she's maintained throughout the crisis finally beginning to crack. The chemical exposure was severe, and the gunshot wound, while not immediately life-threatening, has complicated his treatment. A commotion at the entrance draws their attention as a doctor emerges from the treatment area, looking for Richard's next of kin. Finding no family present, he approaches the gathered group. "Mr. Blake is stabilized but still in critical condition," he announces. "The next 24 hours will be crucial. He's asking to speak with Dr. Johnson." All eyes turn to Amara, curious about the connection between the federal agent and the town's most prominent citizen. The whispers about their past have spread, but few know the full story. The love, the betrayal, the loss that binds them together across time. With a deep breath, Amara follows the doctor into the intensive care unit. Richard lies on a hospital, fed, connected to various monitors and IV lines. His skin is pale except where chemical burns have left angry red patches, and a dressing covers his shoulder wound. Despite his weakened state, his eyes are alert, tracking her movement as she enters the room. "You saved the town," he says, his voice barely above a whisper. "We saved it," she corrects him, taking a seat beside his bed. "Together." He manages a weak smile. "After everything I did to you, you still came back to save me. To save all of us." "I didn't come back for you," Amara reminds him gently. "I came to do my job. And I made that job harder at every turn," he acknowledges, "until I couldn't ignore the truth anymore about the plant, about myself." He pauses, gathering strength to continue. "About us." Amara tenses, uncertain where this conversation is heading. "Richard, please let me finish," he interrupts, his voice strengthening with urgency. "I may not get another chance to say this. What I did to you 10 years ago was unforgivable. I chose ambition over love, money over family. I became someone I never wanted to be, someone my younger self would have despised." He reaches for her hand, and after a moment's hesitation, she allows him to take it. "Seeing you again, watching you fight for this town even after how it treated you, it's shown me how far I've fallen, and what real strength looks like." Amara feels tears threaten again but holds them back. "It's taken me years to rebuild my life after you left, years to become who I am now." "I know," he says softly, "and I would never ask you to undo that journey. But I need you to know that I've never stopped loving you, even when I didn't deserve to. Even when I tried to tell myself I didn't." The monitor tracking his heart rate shows a slight increase as emotion taxes his weakened system. The beeping accelerates, drawing a nurse's attention from the station outside. "I should go," Amara says, starting to rise. "You need to rest," and Richard's grip on her hand tightens slightly. "There's one more thing you need to know. After you left Silver Creek, about a year later, I tried to find you, to make amends, to see if there was any way to repair what I had broken. But you had disappeared completely." This revelation stops Amara cold. Halsey had mentioned this, but hearing it directly from Richard gives it a weight she hadn't allowed herself to feel before. Would it have made a difference? She asks, echoing her question from their earlier confrontation, but this time genuinely, wanting to know. If you had found me then, I don't know, he admits honestly. I was still becoming the person you met when you returned, someone consumed by success and image. But even then, there was a part of me that recognized what I had thrown away, what I had lost. The emotion of the moment is interrupted as Richard's monitors suddenly emit a shrill alarm. His blood pressure drops precipitously, and his breathing becomes labored. The nurse rushes in, quickly followed by a doctor. I need you to step outside, the doctor tells Amara as they work to stabilize Richard, whose consciousness is rapidly fading. As she's ushered from the room, the last thing she sees is Richard's eyes finding hers across the growing chaos, conveying a message that needs no words, a plea for forgiveness, for understanding, for a second chance he may not live to pursue. In the hallway outside, Amara leans against the wall, overwhelmed by the collision of past and present, of personal history and professional duty. For 10 years she has told herself that Richard Blake means nothing to her anymore, that the wound of his betrayal has fully healed. But standing here now, with his life hanging in the balance, she can no longer deny the truth. The past is never truly past, and some bonds once formed can never be completely broken, not by time, not by distance, not even by betrayal. A press conference outside the hospital, where Amara stands before a crowd of reporters, her face composed but her eyes revealing the emotional turmoil within as she prepares to address the dual crisis, the plant's status and Richard's condition. A podium set up outside the hospital, surrounded by journalists and townspeople. As Amara approaches with visible reluctance but resolute determination, the afternoon sun casts long shadows across the hospital parking lot, where a hastily arranged press conference has drawn not only media from across the country, but also hundreds of Silver Creek residents eager for information about both the chemical threat and Richard Blake's condition. News of the relationship between the federal agent and the town's most prominent citizen has spread like wildfire, adding a human drama to the environmental crisis that makes for irresistible headlines. Mayor Reynolds introduces Amara, whose exhaustion is evident despite her professional demeanor. She has not slept in nearly 48 hours, has been exposed to dangerous chemicals despite protective gear, and has weathered emotional storms that would have broken a lesser person. Dr. Johnson has agreed to provide an update on both the containment efforts at Blake Industries and the condition of Richard Blake, the mayor announces, then steps aside. Amara approaches the microphone, aware of the dozens of cameras trained on her face, recording every micro-expression for later analysis. For a moment, she considers maintaining the strictly professional stance she has cultivated throughout her career, detached, factual, unemotional. But as she looks out at the worried faces of Silver Creek citizens, she makes a different choice. I want to speak to you today not just as a federal agent, she begins, her voice steady despite her fatigue, but as someone who once called Silver Creek home. Many of you have heard rumors about my past connection to Richard Blake. Those rumors are true. 10 years ago I lived here. Richard and I were engaged to be married. A murmur ripples through the crowd. Even those who had heard the rumors are surprised by her direct confirmation. When I was assigned to this crisis, I didn't know that it involved Blake Industries. When I learned the truth, I had a choice to make: recuse myself from the assignment, or do the job I was sent to do. I chose to stay because the safety of this community transcended any personal history. She pauses, gathering her thoughts before continuing. The situation at the plant has been stabilized. The sabotage attempts by former plant manager Howard Westfield have been contained, and there is no longer an immediate threat to public health. Environmental monitoring will continue for several weeks, and the evacuation orders will be lifted. Gradually, as each area is confirmed safe, reporters shout questions, but Amara raises a hand to indicate she isn't finished. As for Richard Blake, he remains in critical condition. The doctors are doing everything possible, but the combination of chemical exposure and his gunshot wound presents serious challenges to his recovery. Her voice wavers slightly for the first time, a momentary break in her composure that does not go unnoticed by the attentive crowd. I know many of you have complex feelings about Richard and his company. Some see him as Silver Creek's greatest benefactor, others as a corporate executive who prioritized profits over safety. The truth, as always, lies somewhere in between. She takes a deep breath before continuing, each word carefully chosen. What I can tell you with certainty is that when this town faced its darkest hour, Richard Blake chose to put himself in harm's way. He confronted the saboteur directly, and in doing so he took a bullet that might otherwise have struck me. Whatever mistakes he has made in the past, and there have been many, in that moment he acted with courage and selflessness. Questions erupt from the assembled journalists, overlapping into an unintelligible cacophony until Mayor Reynolds steps in to restore order, calling on reporters one at a time. Dr. Johnson, can you elaborate on the nature of the sabotage? Asks a reporter from a national news network. The investigation is ongoing, but we can confirm that Mr. Westfield deliberately compromised multiple safety systems with the apparent intent of causing catastrophic failure. His motives appear to be related to professional grievances against Mr. Blake and the company. Is it true that your relationship with Richard Blake ended when he abandoned you during pregnancy? Calls out a tabloid journalist, ignoring the established order. The crowd falls silent, the question hanging in the air with brutal directness. Mayor Reynolds starts to intervene, but Amara raises a hand to stop him. My personal history is not relevant to the environmental crisis or its resolution, she says firmly. Next question, but the damage is done. The speculation that had been circulating in whispers is now in the open, broadcast live across the country. Amara maintains her composure through several more questions about technical aspects of the plant remediation before a local reporter from the Silver Creek Gazette stands. Dr. Johnson, he says, his tone respectful but direct. Many of us remember you from when you lived here, though few connected that young woman with the federal agent who arrived to help us. You could have refused this assignment when you realized it involved your ex-fiancé, but you didn't. Can you tell us why? It's the question Amara has been asking herself since she first crossed the Silver Creek town line days earlier. The honest answer is complicated, layered with professional dedication, a need for personal closure, and perhaps something more that she's not ready to acknowledge even to herself. I stayed because it was the right thing to do, she says simply. This town deserved the best response the federal government could provide, and that happened to be me. Whatever happened between Richard Blake and me a decade ago had no bearing on my ability to do my job. As the press conference concludes, Amara is approached by an elderly woman making her way slowly through the dispersing crowd with the help of a cane. It takes Amara a moment to recognize Mrs. Bennett, the same resident she had helped at the Pew evacuation shelter. My dear, the old woman says, taking Amara's hand in her weathered one, I remember when you used to work at the hotel. Such a bright young thing, always with a kind word for everyone. Richard was a fool to let you go and an even bigger fool not to beg you to come back. Tears threaten again as this unexpected kindness breaches Amara's carefully maintained defenses. Thank you, Mrs. Bennett. That means a lot coming from you. He loves you still, you know, the old woman continues, her age granting her the privilege of directness that others might avoid. A blind person could see it in the way he looks at you. The question is, what are you going to do about it? Before Amara can formulate a response, a commotion near the hospital entrance draws their attention. A doctor emerges, scanning the crowd until he spots Amara. His urgent gesture tells her everything she needs to know. Excuse me, she tells Mrs. Bennett, already moving toward the hospital. I have to go. Inside, she's rushed to the intensive care unit, where the medical team works frantically around Richard's bed. His condition has deteriorated rapidly, the combined effects of the chemical exposure and his injury proving too much for his system to withstand. We're losing him, the lead doctor says grimly, as monitors display alarming vital signs. We've tried everything medically indicated, but his body isn't responding to treatment. Amara watches in helpless horror as the man who once meant everything to her, who then broke her heart so completely, now fights for his life. Despite all the pain he caused, Despite the years of anger and resentment, she cannot bear the thought of him dying like this. "Can I speak to him?" she asks, her voice barely audible over the beeping monitors. The doctor hesitates, then nods. "He's unconscious, but hearing is often the last sense to go. If there's something you need to say." She approaches the bed, taking Richard's hand gently in hers. His skin is cool and papery to the touch, so different from the warm strength. She remembers. The busy medical team steps back slightly, giving her a moment of privacy within the crisis. "Richard," she says softly, leaning close to his ear. "It's Amara. I need you to fight. This town needs you to fight." She pauses, then adds the words she never thought she would say again. "I need you to fight." Monitors continue to display deteriorating vital signs, the rhythm of his heartbeat becoming increasingly erratic. Amara's grip on his hand tightens. "You don't get to leave like this," she says, her voice strengthening with determination and a touch of the anger that has sustained her for years. "Not again. Not without making things right. Do you hear me, Richard Blake? You don't get to disappear from my life a second time." One of the doctors moves toward a crash cart, preparing for the worst, but Amara continues, her words flowing from someplace deep within that she has kept carefully guarded for a decade. "Our baby. Our daughter. She never had a chance to fight. Never had a chance to live. But you do. And if there's anything left of the man I once loved, the man who dreamed of changing the world for the better, then you will not give up now. Not when you've just started to remember who you really are." As if in response to her words, there's a subtle change in the monitor readings. Not dramatic, but a slight stabilization where moments before there had been only decline. The medical team pauses, watching the displays with cautious optimism. "Keep talking to him," the lead doctor encourages. "Whatever you're doing, it seems to be helping," Amara continues, her voice dropping to a whisper meant only for Richard. "I named her, you know. Even though she was only with me for 3 months, I called her Hope because that's what she represented to me. Hope for a better future, for a family, for love that would last. When I lost her, I thought I'd lost everything. But I survived, I rebuilt my life, and now against all odds we're here together again." The monitors show further improvement, slow but steady. His heartbeat stabilizes. His blood pressure begins to rise toward a safer level. The medical team moves with renewed purpose, adjusting medications and treatments to support the unexpected rally. "That's it," Amara encourages, relief washing over her as color begins to return to Richard's face. "Come back to us. Come back to Silver Creek. Come back to me." As if hearing her through the fog of his unconscious state, Richard's fingers twitch slightly in her grasp, then curl weakly around her hand in the faintest of squeezes. It's not a dramatic awakening, not the cinematic moment of someone suddenly sitting up and declaring their love, but it's something far more real and precious, the first sign of his fight to return. The lead doctor approaches, checking vitals, and examining Richard with careful attention. "This is remarkable," he says, genuine surprise in his voice. "His system is responding in ways we didn't think possible, given the extent of the exposure. He's not out of danger, but this is the first positive sign we've seen." "Will he recover?" Amara asks, afraid to hope yet unable to stop herself. "It's too soon to say with certainty," the doctor cautions. "But he's fighting now, and with proper treatment and time." He doesn't complete the sentence, but the meaning is clear. There's a chance where moments before there seemed to be none. As the crisis subsides, the medical team gradually withdraws to monitor Richard from a distance, leaving Amara alone. With him in a moment of tentative peace, she remains by his side, still holding his hand, her thoughts and emotions too complex to untangle. Outside the hospital room window, the sun begins to set over Silver Creek, casting a golden glow across the town that has shaped both their lives so profoundly. It's the same town, yet different, just as they are the same people who once loved each other, yet forever changed by time and circumstance. In this twilight hour, with Richard hovering between life and death, Amara finally allows herself to Acknowledge a truth she has resisted since seeing him again. Beneath the anger, beneath the pain of betrayal, beneath the professional determination to do her job without emotional entanglement, there remains a connection between them that has never fully broken. Whether that connection can or should be rebuilt into something new remains to be seen. For now it's enough that they have both survived. The crisis, the confrontation with the past, and the long-delayed reckoning with truths too painful to face until now. The hospital corridor outside Richard's room, days later, where Amara stands watching through the window as Richard, now conscious and recovering, speaks earnestly with a group of town officials about the future of the plant and community. Richard, still in a hospital bed but now conscious and sitting up, surrounded by legal documents that he signs one after another as company executives look on with varying expressions of resignation and concern. 1 week after the crisis, Silver Creek begins to show signs of returning to normal. The evacuation orders have been lifted for most areas, residents are coming home and the immediate danger has passed. But for Richard Blake and Amara Johnson, the aftermath is only beginning. In his hospital room, Richard signs a series of documents that will fundamentally reshape Blake Industries and his relationship with the town he has dominated for 2 decades. His recovery has been deemed miraculous by the medical team, though he remains weakened and will require extensive rehabilitation. "That's the last one, sir," says the company's new acting CEO, sliding the final document into a folder. "The board has accepted all your proposed changes, though not without reservation." Richard nods, setting aside the pen with visible relief. They don't have much choice. It's this, or face federal charges and class action lawsuits that would bankrupt the company entirely. The comprehensive agreement he has just signed includes several key provisions: full cooperation with federal investigators, significant financial penalties, a complete overhaul of the plant's safety systems, and, most surprisingly, the establishment of a trust that transfers 30% of Richard's personal ownership in the company to a community foundation benefiting Silver Creek. It is, in essence, a corporate mea culpa of unprecedented scale, driven not by legal requirement, but by Richard's personal directive. The executives depart, leaving Richard alone with his thoughts. But not for long. Amara enters, having timed her arrival to avoid the corporate delegation. Over the past week, she has maintained a careful professional distance, visiting Richard daily but always in her capacity as the federal agent overseeing the environmental response. Today, however, is different. Her agency's most urgent work in Silver Creek is complete, and she is scheduled to depart tomorrow. "I hear you've been causing tremors on Wall Street," she says, nodding toward the folder of signed documents. "Blake Industries stock dropped 12% on rumors of your radical corporate restructuring." "Only 12, Richard responds, with a wan smile. "I must be losing my touch. I was aiming for 20, at least temporarily." The light moment fades as they regard each other in silence, both aware that their time in this strange limbo, not quite colleagues, not quite enemies, certainly not lovers, but something undefined and powerful nonetheless, is coming to an end. "My team is wrapping up the final environmental assessments," Amara says, maintaining the professional facade that has become their safe territory. The contaminant levels are within acceptable parameters, and the long-term monitoring protocols are in place. "Thank you," Richard says simply. "Not just for the technical work, but for everything." Amara nods, uncertain how to respond to the genuine gratitude in his voice. They have carefully avoided discussing the moment in the ICU when she had pleaded with him to fight, when she had revealed the name of the child they had lost. Both know it happened, but neither has found the courage to broach such tender ground again. "The doctors say you'll make a full recovery," she offers instead. That's good news." "Apparently I'm a stubborn patient," he says, with a small smile. "They claim it's my will to live that pulled me through, but we both know it was something else." His direct reference to what passed between them during his crisis forces Amara to confront what she has been avoiding. "Richard, I heard you," he interrupts gently. "In the ICU, when things were at their worst. I heard you talking about hope, The name of their unborn daughter hanging in the air between them cracks the careful composure Amara has maintained. Tears fill her eyes before she can prevent them. "I never told anyone her name," she admits quietly. "It seemed too personal, too precious to share with a world that didn't even acknowledge her existence." "It's a beautiful name," Richard says, his own eyes glistening. "Perfect for our daughter." The phrase, "our daughter," strikes Amara with unexpected force. For 10 years she has carried the grief of that loss alone, thinking of Hope as exclusively hers because Richard had abdicated any right to fatherhood when he walked away. Hearing him claim that connection now evokes a complex mixture of resentment and unexpected relief, the burden of solitary grief slightly lightened by shared acknowledgement. "I want to make things right, Amara," Richard continues, his voice steady despite the emotion evident in his expression. "Not just with the town or the company, but with you. I know I can never undo what I did, never truly compensate for the pain I caused, but I need to try. I need you to know that I understand now what I threw away, what my choices cost, not just you but both of us, all three of us." Amara listens in silence, years of practiced emotional distance warring with the undeniable pull of their shared history. When she finally speaks, her voice is quiet but firm. "I appreciate what you're trying to do, Richard. I really do. But making things right isn't like signing those corporate agreements, where you can transfer assets or establish trusts and consider the matter resolved. Some wounds don't heal with grand gestures." "I know," he acknowledges. "I'm not asking for forgiveness. I'm not even asking for another chance. I'm just asking for the opportunity to show you over time that the man you see now is more like the man you once loved than the one who hurt you so badly." Before Amara can respond, a knock at the door interrupts them. Mayor Reynolds enters, followed by several town council members and, surprisingly, Elsie Winters, who gives Amara an encouraging smile. "Sorry to intrude," the mayor says, noting the tension in the room, "but we have something important to discuss with both of you." Richard straightens in his bed, shifting from the vulnerability of personal conversation to the more familiar territory of community leadership. "Of course, Mayor. What can we do for you?" The delegation exchanges glances before the mayor continues. "The town council has been discussing how to properly recognize what happened here, both the crisis itself and the extraordinary actions that prevented it from becoming a tragedy." He turns to Amara with formal respect. "Dr. Johnson, your expertise and dedication saved countless lives. Without your immediate response and your willingness to put yourself at risk, Silver Creek might not exist today as we know it." Amara shakes her head slightly, uncomfortable with the praise. "I was just doing my job, Mayor. Any of my colleagues would have done the same." "Perhaps," Elsie interjects gently, "but not many would have done it with the personal obstacles you faced. Coming back to a town that had failed you, working alongside the very man who had hurt you so deeply, that took exceptional courage." The direct reference to her history with Richard makes Amara tense, but there's no judgment in the older woman's eyes, only compassion and respect. The mayor continues, "We would like to establish a new public park on the eastern side of town, the same area that would have been most affected by the chemical release. And with your permission, we would like to name it Hope Johnson Park in honor of the child you lost and the hope you restored to our community." The proposal lands like a physical blow, momentarily robbing Amara of breath. For 10 years, her grief has been private, her loss unacknowledged by the world. The idea of such a public memorial, a validation of Hope's brief existence, is overwhelming. I don't know what to say," she manages finally, tears flowing freely now. "You don't have to decide immediately," the mayor assures her. "We understand this is a deeply personal matter." Richard, watching Amara's reaction with profound understanding, speaks up. "If I may suggest an alternative, or rather, an addition." He turns to the town officials. "The park is a beautiful idea, but perhaps it could be called simply Hope Park. And rather than attributing it solely to Dr. Johnson's loss, it could stand as a memorial to all the children this town has lost, for whatever reason." He looks back to Amara, his gaze seeking her approval. That way hope would be honored, but her memory would also be part of something larger, a community healing, not just a personal one. The sensitivity of his suggestion, the way he has found a path that honors their daughter without putting Amara's private grief on public display, touches her deeply. It's a glimpse of the thoughtful, compassionate man she had fallen in love with long ago, before ambition and wealth twisted his priorities. "I think that's a wonderful idea," she says softly. The meeting continues with discussion of the technical aspects of the park proposal, but Amara's attention remains partially fixed on Richard, seeing him with new eyes. His near-death experience seems to have stripped away layers of corporate artifice, revealing more of the authentic self that had been buried beneath success and status. As the town delegation prepares to leave, Elsie hangs back, catching Amara's arm gently. "He's trying, child," she says quietly. "People can change, you know. Not many do, but some learn from their mistakes, especially when life gives them a second chance." "It's not that simple, Elsie," Amara responds, though without the defensive edge that would have accompanied such words days earlier. "Of course not," the older woman agrees. "Nothing worth having ever is, but sometimes the hardest step is just being willing to consider possibilities we've closed our hearts to." After everyone has left, Amara and Richard find themselves alone again, the air between them charged with unspoken questions and possibilities neither is quite ready to articulate. "You don't have to leave tomorrow," Richard says, finally breaking the silence. "The environmental monitoring will continue for months. Your agency could justify your continued presence." "My assignment here is complete," Amara responds. "Professional boundaries providing safer ground than personal considerations. Another team will handle the long-term follow-up." "And if there were other reasons to stay," he asks cautiously. "Not professional ones." The question hangs between them, forcing Amara to confront what she has been avoiding since their reconciliation began. The possibility of a future that includes Richard Blake in some capacity, whether as a friend, a co-parent to a memory, or, perhaps someday, something more. "I've built a life elsewhere," she says after a long pause. "A good life with work that matters and people who value me. I can't just abandon that because circumstances have changed here." Richard nods, accepting her answer without protest. "I understand. But Silver Creek will always be here, Amara. And so will I, trying to be better than I was. If you ever want to see what that looks like, even just as a friend, you'll always be welcome." The humility in his offer, the absence of pressure or expectation, touches something in Amara that years of anger had calcified but not destroyed, the capacity to see beyond pain to possibility. "I need time," she says finally. "This has all happened so quickly, the crisis, the revelations, your injury. I need to step back and process everything before I can decide what comes next." "Take all the time you need," Richard assures her. "I've waited 10 years to tell you how sorry I am, to show you the man I should have been. I can wait longer if necessary." As Amara leaves the hospital room, she feels lighter somehow, as if a burden she has carried for a decade has begun ever so slightly to lift. Not because she has forgiven Richard, that may never be entirely possible, but because she has allowed herself to acknowledge the full spectrum of her feelings, including those that don't fit neatly into the narrative of righteous anger she has maintained for so long. Walking across the hospital parking lot, she pauses to look back at the building where Richard continues his recovery. The sun sets behind it, painting the sky in hues of orange and purple that reflect off the windows like flames, not the destructive fire of crisis, but the warming glow of transformation. Silver Creek stretches out before her, the town that witnessed her greatest joy and deepest pain now altered irrevocably by her return. Whatever comes next, this place and these people will never again exist solely in her memory as symbols of betrayal and loss. They have become something more complex, a landscape where healing, however tentative, has begun to take root alongside the scars of the past. Amara stands at her rental car, suitcase in hand, gazing at the "Welcome to Silver Creek" sign at the town boundary, hesitation evident in her posture as she prepares to leave. 1 month after the chemical crisis, Silver Creek has found its new normal. Blake Industries, now under new leadership, has shifted focus, with Richard stepping back from daily operations to oversee a community trust and focus on recovery. Amara left the day after their hospital conversation. Her agency granted an extended leave, acknowledging the toll Silver Creek had taken. Back in her Diwasis apartment, she sorts through accumulated mail, her mind frequently drifting to the town and to Richard. Among the stack is a formal invitation bearing the Blake Industries logo. Inside, a handwritten note from Richard. "Your presence would mean everything, but I understand if you're not ready. Whatever you decide, Hope will be honored as she deserves to be. Yours, Richard." The simple yours carries more weight than formality ever could. She sets the invitation aside, unsure. Returning would stir emotions she's tried to bury, but missing Hope's memorial feels equally wrong. That evening, Amara calls Elsie for perspective. "He's changed, child," Elsie says. "Not just in actions, but in spirit. He visits Hope's memorial site every day, just sits there." The image shakes Amara's resolve. "People don't really change," she murmurs. "Maybe not," Elsie replies. "But nearly dying and finding you again, it shifted something in him." After the call, Amara holds the invitation again. "Life in D.C. is safe. Silver Creek is not. But there's unfinished business, and perhaps closure to be found." Meanwhile, Richard contemplates his future. Though his health is stable, lasting effects linger. A slight tremor, shortness of breath. The board urges him to return, but he's more drawn to the Trust's community work, funding scholarships, clinic upgrades, and Hope Park. As the ceremony nears, he accepts Amara may not return. Still, he hopes. The morning before the event, Richard visits the park site. The space, once industrial wasteland, now holds promise. At the center, a temporary wooden post bears one word: Hope. Lost in thought, he doesn't hear approaching footsteps, and "I thought I might find you here." He turns. Amara stands nearby, casual but guarded. "Amara," he says, startled. "You came, I decided last night. Wasn't sure until I saw the Welcome to Silver Creek sign again. Are you making the right choice?" he asks. She studies the transformed space. "I think so. I needed to be here." For Hope, she joins him on the bench, leaving space between them. "Tell me about the memorial," she says quietly. Richard describes the stone obelisk, the reflecting pool, and a granite book listing names of the town's lost children. "It's beautiful," Amara says. "Thank you for making it more than just Gus." "It was the right way to honor her," he replies, "to make her part of the town's healing." They sit in silence, the morning sun rising, birdsong in the distance. "How long will you stay?" Richard finally asks. "Just until after the ceremony," she replies. "I have projects waiting." He nods. "Your team's done great work. The systems are holding. Remediation's ahead of schedule. I've seen the reports. Your company seems committed." "It's not my company anymore," Richard says gently. "Not like before." "I've stepped away." Amara blinks in surprise. "That's a significant change. What will you do instead?" "Focus on the community trust," Richard says. "There's fulfillment in rebuilding a town. More perhaps than chasing profits. It's about lives improving, not just numbers." The sincerity of his words catches her off guard. It's as if the crisis stripped him back to someone she once knew, a man driven by values, not vanity. "You seem different," she notes. "Near death does that," he says with a small smile. "But it wasn't just the injury. It was seeing you again, seeing who I became and how far I'd strayed from the man you once loved. Meeting you as a stranger showed me what I lost." His candor strikes something in her, a spark buried beneath years of disappointment. "We've both changed," she says quietly. "Pain tends to shape us more than joy. And sometimes it offers second chances," Richard replies. "Not to undo the past, but to build something new that honors it." Amara is silent, struck by how closely his words mirror her own thoughts. When she speaks again, her tone is even. "I didn't come back for you. I came for hope, for closure, for peace of mind." "I understand," Richard says gently. "But seeing the changes, it matters. It doesn't erase anything, but it matters." Richard accepts this with grace. That's all I can ask, the chance to show you who I'm trying to be. As they sit in silence beneath the morning sun, with the wooden marker, for Hope nearby something subtle shifts. Not a rekindled love, but the seed of something new, fragile and true. The next day, Silver Creek gathers for the groundbreaking of Hope Park. The entire town is present. Families, workers, officials, media. The mood is reverent, emotional. On stage, Mayor Reynolds speaks of resilience, unity, and rebirth. He thanks first responders, Blake Industries, and the townspeople who pulled together through disaster. One by one, parents step forward to place stones bearing names into the reflecting pool that will become the heart of the memorial. When Richard's turn comes, he steps forward with a trembling hand, placing a stone, etched with a single word, hope. He scans the crowd until his gaze finds Amara. They lock eyes, no words, just understanding. Her small nod encourages him, grounding the moment. Later, as the crowd disperses, Richard approaches her quietly. Will you walk with me? They stroll a winding path through the emerging park, neither speaking at first. When do you leave? He asks. Tomorrow morning, she replies. Richard nods. This park, it's not the end. Hope will be remembered here, whether you're here or not. I know, Amara says, and I've seen how committed you are, not just to the park, but the company, the town, yourself, and us, Richard asks, not pushing, just wondering. Could something be rebuilt differently? Amara takes her time. I don't know. For so long I needed to leave everything you represented. Coming back means redefining that. It's not quick. I'm not asking for anything except possibility. She looks out at Silver Creek, the place that wounded her yet shaped her. Maybe I could visit, she says. Check on the park's progress. Professionally, of course. He smiles. Silver Creek could use your expertise, and the trust could use an environmental consultant of your caliber. Her answering smile is the first genuine one since she arrived. Always the businessman. Better reasons now, he says. As they loop back toward the stage, now nearly empty, Amara surprises herself. Reaching into her pocket, she withdraws a small worn photograph. I want you to have this, she says, offering it to him. It's the only ultrasound I had of Hope. I've carried it for years, but this feels right. Richard takes it reverently, eyes misting. As he gazes at the grainy image, thank you, he says hoarsely. This means everything. I should go, Amara says. Still need to pack, of course. He carefully tucks the photo into his pocket. May I drive you to the airport? No pressure. Just a proper goodbye this time. The contrast between this farewell and their painful parting a decade ago is stark. This time it's measured, respectful. Whatever happens, they face it honestly. I'd like that, Amara says. The next morning, as Richard's car nears the Silver Creek town limits, Amara asks him to pull over beside the Welcome to Silver Creek sign, the same one she paused at weeks earlier. She steps out, takes a photo, capturing the contrast. She now leaves not in fear, but in strength, head high, past confronted, peace earned. Richard stays in the car, sensing this moment is hers alone. When she returns, her expression is lighter. Ready? He asks. Yes, she replies. I think I am. As they drive, conversation flows easily. They discuss work, her, projects, the plant's progress, and slowly edge into personal ground. Richard shares plans for a scholarship in Hope's name. Amara mentions returning for the park's completion. No promises, just possibility. At the airport, their farewell is quiet and meaningful. Safe travels, Amara, Richard says. Thank you, not just for saving the town, but for letting me start making amends. So you're doing good work, she says. Don't stop. They part without knowing when they'll meet again, but certain they will. What form their connection will take remains to be seen. But the door is open. As Amara's plane lifts off, she watches Silver Creek shrink below. The river, the chemical plant, and now Hope Park. She thinks of the girl she once was, of Hope and of the woman she's become. Someone strong enough to return and heal. Back on the ground, Richard takes a different route home, stopping briefly at the park site. Crews are already working. He watches, hand resting over the ultrasound photo in his pocket, a symbol of loss and redemption. The sun breaks through the clouds, casting golden light on Silver Creek. As the Hope Park sign disappears in his rear-view mirror, Richard makes a silent vow to keep building, to keep honoring, and to be worthy of this second chance. In Washington, Amara unpacks. Among her belongings is a simple stone from the IG Park, earth from a place transformed by memory and healing. She sets it on her windowsill, not as a shrine, but as a reminder. Healing comes in unexpected ways. She gazes at the photo she took at the town sign, now symbolic, a road that leads both away from and back to the places that shape us. Later, in her quiet apartment, Amara does something she hasn't in years. She speaks aloud to Hope. "Your father is trying," she says softly, "and so am I. Not a promise, not forgiveness, just truth. And for now, that is enough." Thank you from the bottom of my heart for staying with us through Amara and Richard's powerful journey of healing and redemption. Their story reminds us all that while we cannot change our past, we absolutely control who we become after it. If this story touched something within you, perhaps a memory of your own strength during difficult times, or a reminder that second chances sometimes come when we least expect them, please consider subscribing to our channel. Your support allows us to continue bringing these emotionally rich stories of resilience and transformation to life. Remember, just like Amara, your greatest chapter may still be waiting to be written. Join our community by clicking the subscribe button below and never miss another story that might just change how you see your own journey. Until next time, may you find hope in unexpected places.